Divine Revelation, discovering Iran's incredible biblical purpose and transforming destiny. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, the fate of a young orphan named Esther was about to intertwine with the sovereign power of the Persian Empire. Raised by her cousin Mordecai, a man of unwavering faith in Yahweh, Esther learned the rich history of her people, the Exodus from Egypt, the covenant at Sinai, and the promises that sustained them through centuries of trials. Yet, as she wandered through the bustling streets of Shushan, the citadel of Persia, she felt the ache of exile deep within her heart. One fateful day, a decree was issued from King Xerxes' palace, calling forth the most beautiful maidens of the land to be taken for the king's selection of a new queen. Esther's beauty, a divine gift, set her apart, and she was chosen, swept away to the opulent palace where laughter and indulgence met the shadows of danger. Every corner was adorned with rare jewels and fragrant oils, yet the clash between Persian customs and her own sacred identity weighed heavily upon her spirit. Esther remained closely connected to the memories of her ancestors, invoking their strength as she learned the intricate ways of court life. However, the atmosphere darkened as whispers of doom festered, woven by Haman, the king's advisor, who brewed hatred against the Jewish people. Mordecai, upon hearing of Haman's nefarious plot to annihilate the Jews, donned sackcloth and mourned loudly in the city, his cries echoing against the lofty palace walls. In this inescapable moment of despair, Mordecai pressed upon Esther the urgency of her position, reminding her, "Who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Esther 4 verse 14, ESV. The words reverberated in Esther's heart like the haunting melodies of her people's lament. What greater purpose could lay before her than standing boldly for her own kin? Yet, the risk was insurmountable. To approach the king unbidden was to court death. As days turned into a longing fast, Esther summoned her maids, inviting them into her plea for divine favor. Amidst the aromas of the opulent palace, her resolve grew stronger, tempered by fasting and prayer. Each hour deepened her conviction, her heart steadying against the tumult of fear and purpose. Finally, the day dawned, and Esther donned the finest royal garments, her heart a battleground of hope and dread. As she stepped into the throne room, time hung still, and the weight of history bore down. Approaching Xerxes, she felt her Jewish identity converge with her royal station. Would he receive her plea in the very palace that symbolized her conditional acceptance yet threatened her existence? The king's gaze solidified the moment, shimmering with authority and intrigue, yet it carved the uncertainty deeper in her soul. Would her unveiling a child of Yahweh standing before the mighty Xerxes turn the tides of fate? The outcome remained shrouded in divine mystery, as Esther steadied her breath, prepared to invoke the name of her people, seeking deliverance amid perilous splendor. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. The currents of Esther's life surged as she prepared to reveal her truth. Standing at the crossroad of destiny, her faith hung like a thread, waiting for God to weave his purpose into the fabric of history. Would Yahweh honor her courage, or would this moment seal the fate of her people? The hearts of millions trembled with her, as the threads of divine providence began to intertwine, enveloping Esther in a holy embrace of uncertainty and steadfast hope. And it came to pass, as Esther stood in the presence of King Xerxes, her heart pounding like the drums of war. She took a step forward, and the thick air of the throne room shimmered with tension. The king, his countenance regal and imposing, regarded her with quizzical eyes, piercing through her masked trepidation. "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request?" Xerxes inquired, his voice echoing softly, yet carrying the weight of authority. The court sat in rapt attention, silencing its whispers, as if the very walls strained to hear her words. Gaining her composure, Esther opened her mouth, but for a moment found herself adrift amidst the swirling tides of fear. Yet, she remembered the words of Mordecai and the promises of Yahweh. "If it pleases the king," she began, her voice steadying, "and if I have found favor in your sight, grant me my life and my people's life." The silken threads of the court wove tighter around her, and she continued, "For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. If we had been sold merely as slaves, I would have been silent, for our affliction would not be worthy of the king's concern." A silence hung in the air, and the heart of Xerxes quickened in confusion and rage. "Who is it, and where is he who has dared to do this?" he thundered, his eyes now scanning the glittering court. The sense of peril crackled like a divine spark, igniting the atmosphere with palpable dread. Esther's heart raced with steadfast courage as she pointed her finger towards Haman, who stood mortified and pale. "A foe, an enemy, this wicked Haman," she declared with boldness, the utterance cascading through the gathering like fresh winds through barren fields. The expression on Xerxes' face shifted, transforming from intrigue to ire. Seizing the moment, he rose, his throne seeming to tremble with righteous anger. In the depths of his wrath, he stormed from the hall to the palace garden to contemplate the treachery unleashed upon his queen and her people. But Haman, consumed by fear and desperation, fell upon Esther's couch, imploring her for mercy. "Let not your heart be troubled, my queen. I beg of you," he wailed, grasping at her for salvation. She recoiled, her spirit fueled by indignation that fought to overpower her ancient fear. When Xerxes returned, his face was aflame with indignation. "Will he even assault the queen in my presence?" he roared. The guards, swift as the wings of angels, seized Haman and led him away. The fate of the wicked adviser hanged in balance as a noose was devised for him to be hoisted upon the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. In that instant, the light of divine providence broke forth, illuminating the shadow of despair that had cloaked Esther's heart. Could it be that her brave act, prompted by relentless prayer and fasting, was the very seed planted for the deliverance of her people? The tension within the palace shifted as the plans of the evil one unraveled swiftly, entwined with Esther's courageous plea and the sovereign hand of God. For such a time as this echoed in the depths of her spirit, resonating with truth and fate, unknown to her, the cycle of redemption was spiraling forth, as heavenly decrees proclaimed a reversal of doom. The destiny of Israel teetered on the edge, awaiting the full revelation of God's unwavering will. But what she did not know was that the story God was writing through her bravery would echo through generations, lighting the path of hope for countless souls. The tapestry of his sovereign plan was far more intricate than her heart could fathom. What would become of the Jewish people, and how would their deliverance unfold in the annals of time? And it came to pass that as dusk descended upon the palace, a heavy silence enveloped the court of King Xerxes. The air was laden with anticipation, for the fate of Haman was sealed within the minds of the king's faithful servants. The guards, standing resolute, prepared to escort the wicked adviser to his impending doom, while a profound stillness gripped every heart present. The king, returning from the garden, bore the marks of wrath ignited by betrayal, feeling the burden of the decision that lay heavy upon him. "What shall be done to Haman, the man who sought to destroy my queen and her people?" His voice echoed with resolute passion, voicing the chorus of justice overdue. The attendants, trembling at the sight of the furious monarch, spoke with great caution. "Let the gallows be the end of this treachery, O king, for Haman hath acted with malicious intent." The words hung in the air, reflecting the sentiments that mirrored the scorn of the people. The suggestion was met with nods of agreement from those who had gathered, emboldened by the display of patriotic fervor. Then Xerxes commanded, "Hang Haman upon the gallows he prepared for Mordecai." The decree slipped forth like a divine pronouncement, shaking the very foundation of the palace. Haman, fully aware of the weight of his crimes, knew he was now caught in the grasp of the very net he had woven for others. As he was led away, the darkness within his heart churned, revealing the depths of his despair. "Oh, Esther, what have I done?" he lamented, as the life that had once flowed through his veins began to ebb away beneath the weight of justice. Meanwhile, Esther, even in her anxiety, felt the hand of providence stirring within her spirit. She clutched at her breast, an echo of divine assurance whispering through her soul. "The Lord has chosen me, perhaps for this moment, to stand in the gap for my people." Her prayers, born out of a fervent heart, had reached the ears of the Almighty. In the void of impending destruction, a revelation dawned upon her. For I was placed in this position to speak for those who cannot speak, to be a voice for the voiceless, she ventured inwardly, grasping the weight of her purpose as tears fell like rain during a drought. The very essence of her identity as a daughter of Zion rose fiercely within her, a strength rooted in the covenant promised to her ancestors, and so it was that as the ominous gallows stood witness to the impending justice, a shift in the spirit realm transpired. The cries of the oppressed resounded, merging with the cries of the repentant. A new decree was being prepared, one that would alter the course of history. And the king, his heart softened by the boldness of Esther and the cries for justice, turned to her once more. "Queen Esther, what more shall I do to ensure your people are saved?" The question resonated across the court, igniting hope in the hearts of those who had been marked for death. With her chin held high, Esther replied, "Let a decree be issued to spare my people, to defend them against their enemies, for the battle is won not by strength alone, but by the hand of God that guides our every step." Xerxes nodded gravely, the decision burning brightly in his heart, for it was not merely a decree but a divine intervention unfolding. So let it be written, so let it be done. Yet what Esther could not foresee was that a greater movement was unfolding, a divine reversal of the very fate that sought to ensnare the Jewish people. The shadows of despair would give way to a dazzling dawn as God's plan unfurled beyond the confines of the palace, for behind the veil of human intent, a sovereign design was at work to thwart the adversary's plot, weaving together hearts and destinies in a way only the Almighty could orchestrate. How would this intricate tapestry conclude, and what would be the final thread to unravel in the days ahead? The hearts of the faithful sought the answer, while heaven prepared a revelation that would herald hope for generations to come. And it came to pass that the decree of King Xerxes was inscribed upon the royal scrolls, swift as the wings of a dove, to be sent throughout the provinces, declaring the salvation of the Jewish people. The king's scribes, with ink freshly pressed and the urgency of the moment evident, recorded the words of the monarch, "To the people of Israel, be it known that the Jews shall defend themselves against any who rise against them. Let it be known from Susa to the farthest reaches of the kingdom." As the royal edict was dispatched, a weight lifted from Esther's heart, replaced by a resolute peace that echoed the confidence of her ancestors, who had also faced trials of great magnitude. "For the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob shall not abandon his people," she whispered as she clutched her amulet, her spirit ignited with the hope of deliverance that only faith could ignite. In the shadows of the court, the air was charged with inquiries and suppositions regarding the sudden turnaround of fortune. Who could have prompted this change? Pondered one noble. Is it the influence of Esther or the turning of the will of the king? Yet, amidst the murmurs and confusion, the truth remained veiled, known only in the heavenly realms where God orchestrates the affairs of men. Meanwhile, Haman, already ensnared in his own malice, wandered deeper into despair as the gallows loomed menacingly, transformed into a symbol of his downfall. "Mordecai," he cried out in anguish, "why could I not silence him?" The bitter taste of regret coursed through him as he recalled the plot of destruction he had conjured, now turned against him. In the horror of his fate, he recognized the hands directing the events, the same hands that had spared the life of the faithful Jewish man in the far reaches of Susa. Mordecai, emboldened by the new decree, gathered the elders of the Jews, urging them to prepare for the fight ahead. "This is a time of great sorrow turned to joy," he declared, firm in his belief that the God of their ancestors would fight for them. "Let us gather strength in prayer and fasting, for our deliverance has come." As the people rallied in unity, an unprecedented hope began to encircle the community of Israel, crossing the boundaries that had once divided them. Women gathered with children in prayer, while men sharpened their swords in preparation for the battle that lay ahead, all driven by a resolute faith, but unbeknownst to them, a greater plan was unfolding beyond the physical realm. Angels, ascending and descending, carried petitions before the throne of God, who watched meticulously over his chosen people. They whispered verses of deliverance, reminding the heavens of the covenant made with Abraham, a reminder of his unshakable promise that his people would never fall into the hands of destruction. As shadows danced through the courts of Xerxes, the weight of divine purpose grew heavier, clothed in mystery. Each heart beat in rhythm with the unfolding saga of redemption, yet lingering questions remained. How would it all come to pass? What final act would seal the fate of the adversary, and how would the lives intertwined in this cosmic battle change forever? Thus, in the stillness of the night, the hearts of the faithful trembled with anticipation. The moment of reckoning was drawing near, between the forces of darkness and the light of providence. Little did they know, the most striking revelation was yet to come, a turning that would not only alter their fate but resonate for all generations to behold, a divine unveiling that would echo through the eons. And it came to pass that the day drew near when the people would stand to defend their lives, invoking the mighty name of the Lord. As the sun rose over Susa, casting light upon the city, hope and dread filled the hearts of many. Esther, now clothed in the burden and honor of her people, stood resolute. "If I perish, I perish," she had proclaimed earlier, a conviction that now resonated deeply within her spirit. Gathering the noble women of her court, Esther instructed them to prepare for the days ahead. "Let us adorn ourselves not only with jewels but with the strength of prayer," she urged. "We will seek the face of God, for it is He who will deliver us." The women, filled with purpose, took hold of one another's hands in solidarity, uniting their voices in cry for mercy. Meanwhile, as the decree echoed through the provinces, news of the Jewish uprising spread like wildfire. The fear of the Lord fell upon many, and those who had once sought to hide in silence now considered the righteousness of their actions. Among the people, some turned to their idols in anguish while others sought the truth of the God of Israel. As the day approached for battle, Haman's resentment boiled with intensity. The gallows he had crafted for Mordecai stood ominously outside his dwelling, a daily reminder of his impending doom. He conspired fervently with his wife, Zeresh, and his friends, stating, "Tomorrow, we will rid ourselves of the Jews once and for all." Yet even as he vowed, the shadows in his heart grew darker still. For he had begun to realize that the very plans he orchestrated for the downfall of Mordecai were now leading towards his own demise. In the heavenly realm, the angels beheld Haman's arrogance. "How long shall the wicked mock the plans of the Most High?" they whispered, aware that the Lord's justice would soon be revealed. Poised with their swords drawn, they awaited the command of the Almighty, ready to protect His chosen. On the night before the impending conflict, Mordecai and the people of Israel gathered once more in the synagogue. The scrolls were unfurled, and the words of the Lord filled the air. They recited the promise found in Psalm 34 verse 17, "The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them, He delivers them from all their troubles." Their faith became a shield, and their hearts beat with ancient stories of deliverance, of how God parted the sea, and how the walls of Jericho fell by faith. It was in that hallowed moment that Esther received a vision. The veil between heaven and earth was pulled back, unveiling a glimpse of God's sovereign plan. She saw the adversary's end, not merely in the physical realm, but etched into eternity, where the history of redemption would speak of her faith and bravery. Stepping forward, she commanded her people, "Prepare yourselves. For the battle is not ours, it is the Lord's. With the dawn, we shall rise and fight. Our cries will pierce the heavens." The people's hearts surged with renewed vigor, echoing her declaration of faith. And so, with all eyes fixed on the horizon where light pierced the darkness, anticipation nestled in their souls. The dawn would reveal the hands of the Almighty, crafting victory from ashes, as the destiny of nations hung in the balance. Yet, as the sun began to rise, they could not fathom the depths of God's plan nor the pivotal role one would play, a revelation that would unfold in an unexpected twist, bringing about joy and remembrance for generations to come. As the first light of dawn illuminated the sky, a hush descended upon the city of Susa, as if the very heavens awaited the outcome of the day. Esther, clad in royal garments yet burdened with her people's fate, stood at the edge of her chambers, her heart aflame with righteous resolve. The people stirred in their homes, their anxious murmurs a chorus of fear and faith mingled together. "Let us arise," Esther declared with a voice that bore authority and compassion, "for the God of Israel will fight for us. Today, we stand not just as a nation but as a testament to His everlasting mercy." The women gathered around her, their faces reflecting courage as they prepared themselves for the day ahead. They bathed themselves in prayer, invoking the Lord's name, honoring the covenant made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Mordecai, unyielding in his spirit, rallied the men. Hear me, O sons of Israel. This day is not lost. The Lord has remembered his people, and he shall deliver us from the hand of our enemies. Let us march forward, armed not only with swords and shields but with the hope placed in our hearts by our God. As morning broke and the sun rose higher, the palace of King Ahasuerus echoed with the clatter of soldiers preparing for war. Haman, blinded by anger and ambition, summoned his men, exuding confidence despite the latent fear in his heart. Today, he proclaimed, I shall rid this kingdom of the Jewish race. The gallows await Mordecai, and with him, the end of their legacy. But unbeknownst to Haman, in the court of heaven, a divine council convened. Shall the wicked triumph? An angel cried, sensing the turmoil on earth. The Lord of hosts, seated upon his majestic throne, responded, No weapon forged against my chosen shall prosper. Indeed, I have raised up a deliverer in Esther, and her faith shall be the sword that cuts through darkness. The faces of the righteous grew pale, hearts raced as they looked toward the citadel where the king resided. Esther, emboldened by the vision given to her, summoned courage. She donned the royal crown, yet it felt lighter than the mantle of her people's despair. Today, I will go before the king, she instructed, I will speak for my kin, the Lord's favor will be my countenance. Entering the king's grand hall, the atmosphere thickened, her heart beating in unison with the urgency of her mission. As she drew near, King Ahasuerus looked upon her with an expression of surprise and delight. What is troubling you, Esther? You have my ear and my heart. With trembling lips but unwavering faith, she replied, If it pleases the king, let my people be spared. We have been condemned to die for a decree wrought in hatred. Seek the truth of this matter. The tension hung like a thick mist. Meanwhile, Haman, lurking in the shadows, sensed the change in the air, his heart racing as the whispers of fate began to twist around him. He entered soon after, boasting of his power, yet utterly unaware of the web of divine destiny unfolding. As Esther's voice rang through the hall, echoing the plight of her people, the wheels of providence began to turn. The king's brow furrowed, sensing not just the gravity of the situation but the very providence of God orchestrating events with holy precision. But what would become of Haman's plans? What other revelations awaited them on this day of reckoning? As the standoff unfolded between the accuser and the beloved, a final oracle lingered in the air, one that foreshadowed not only purification for Israel but also a glorious twist of destiny that would resound through generations, echoing the unfathomable depths of God's sovereign will. As the king regarded Esther with concern, the air quivered with tension, and the gathered nobles shifted restlessly. Ahasuerus, noticing the deep sorrow in her eyes, asked again, What is your request, Queen Esther? Even to the half of my kingdom, it shall be granted. Esther swallowed hard, holding tightly to the threads of divine purpose that bound her to her nation. If it pleases the king, she began once more, her voice imbued with the weight of both her plight and her people's souls, let us gather for a banquet today. I will use this occasion to share the truth of our fate and the treachery that looms over us. The king, intrigued, nodded enthusiastically, summoning his nobles to prepare the feast. Thus did Esther's heart quicken, for she sensed that the moment was near when the hidden treachery of Haman would be unveiled. She understood the weight of her moment, for it lay upon her to unearth the deceit lurking behind the royal decrees, spearheaded by the man who now presented false humility before the throne. The banquet was quickly prepared, fragrant dishes laid out, and the finest wine poured in golden goblets. Haman, invited as the king's favored adviser, strutted with arrogance, yet within him stirred a nameless dread. Sitting across from Esther and Ahasuerus, he cast surreptitious glances filled with suspicion, as if an unseen hand gripped his throat. As their cups clinked in the toast of celebration, Ahasuerus raised his goblet with a jovial spirit, yet Esther's heart craved the moments still to come. After courses of food had been devoured, when the laughter rang into the air, she finally summoned her voice. My lord, she said, her tone shifting from lightheartedness to solemnity, should I have found favor in your sight, I beseech you allow me to reveal the threat against my life and the life of my people. A hush fell over the gathering, the last drops of drink suspended in mid-air. Haman's pulse raced, sensing the direction of her words. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. The adversary behind this edict in your name is none other than Haman, the Agagite." Gasps erupted from the assembly, and Haman's face, once a mask of pride, shifted to the pallor of fear. The very foundation of his ambitions trembled as King Ahasuerus' countenance darkened, a storm brewing behind his eyes. "Is this true?" The king thundered, turning upon Haman with a fiery gaze that seemed to pierce through the shadows of his deceit. Haman's mouth opened, yet words failed him, the weight of his ambition now a grave burden upon his heart. "My lord," he stammered, desperation tainting his voice, "I had no malice against the queen." Esther, emboldened by divine courage, answered, "His malice is great, for he has sought to extinguish the descendants of Jacob, lest your royal legacy be remembered. Yet God has not abandoned his promise." Ahasuerus, filled with rage, stormed from the hall. The very walls echoed with his footsteps as he grasped the enormity of betrayal laid bare before him. Haman, now desperate, fell at Esther's feet, pleading, "Please, I beseech you, spare my life." Yet Esther's heart burned with righteousness, and she turned her gaze to heaven. In that moment, she perceived the unfolding of a greater purpose, one where God's mercy would triumph over the shadow of wickedness. Returning from the garden, the king carried a decree of punishment, one that would seal the fate of Haman. And as the plan unfolded, the promise of deliverance for Israel was not only near but echoed through the ages. Yet, amid this revelation, a deeper mystery lingered on the horizon. What other tides of divine purpose would sweep over Susa? For the hour was drawing near, and with it, God's deeper designs lay waiting to be unveiled. As the king departed, a solemn stillness enveloped the banquet hall, leaving Esther and Haman in the dim glow of flickering lamps. The nobles exchanged anxious glances, their minds racing with the implications of the queen's revelation. In the shadows, whispers of doubt swirled like leaves caught in a tempest. Haman, now trembling, raised his hands in supplication, his arrogance stripped away as he implored, "Do not let my life be forfeit. I did not fathom the consequences of my actions. I beseech the queen." His voice was laced with panic, a desperate charade of remorse, yet Esther remained resolute, her spirit fortified by heavenly resolve. "Your treachery has been laid bare," she declared, her voice unwavering. "It is not my hand that shall decide your fate, but the judgment of the Almighty, who sees the intentions of all hearts. You have dared to set your will against my people, and the cries of the innocent have ascended to heaven." As she spoke, the weight of her words hung heavily in the air, piercing the darkness of Haman's wickedness. Outside the hall, the night sky was a tapestry of stars, each like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. Yet within those walls, the shadows of deceit battled against the light of truth. King Ahasuerus returned, his brow furrowed, a decree inscribed upon a scroll clutched in his hand. He paused, the anger still boiling within him, and, as his eyes searched for his queen, they darted to Haman, the man who had betrayed loyalty with malice. "Haman!" he bellowed, his voice echoing ominously against the stone walls. "You sought to destroy my queen and her people. What shall be done with such treachery?" Haman fell silent, his heart racing like a panicked beast. "O king, my lord," he implored, "I have served you faithfully. Do not judge me solely by the whispers of this moment." Yet each plea fell on deaf ears, for the king had made known his judgment. With righteous indignation, Ahasuerus unfurled the scroll, declaring, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, a decree of vengeance must be enacted. The nobles gasped once more as the king's voice rang with authority, piercing through the murmurings of the assembly. "Haman shall receive the fate he prepared for the Jews. He who plotted our destruction shall taste the bitter fruit of his own deceit." Darkness loomed in Haman's heart as he clutched the table, feeling the earth shift beneath him. With swift commands, guards converged, binding Haman's hands to lead him away. As he was escorted from the hall, a deep sense of justice began to stir in the hearts of the gathered ones, turning dread into hope. Esther turned her gaze to the heavens, sensing the impending culmination of God's purpose. For such a time as this, she whispered softly, realizing that the moment of deliverance for her people had come not through her strength but through the sovereign plan of the Almighty. She felt a wave of peace wash over her as the seeds of her faith blossomed into resolve, acknowledging that even amid darkness, God's light would prevail. In the distance, voices lifted in prayer, a holy response resonating throughout the land, a call for divine intervention, for restoration and redemption. The pulse of Israel's hope quickened, threading through the hearts of those who longed for deliverance, yet still, from beneath the shadows of the unfolding narrative, another mystery beckoned. How would this decree of retribution echo through history, weaving the tale of a courageous queen into the divine tapestry of destiny? What further revelations would God unveil, shaping not just a people, but ultimately, the very course of nations? The air thrummed with anticipation as God's hand moved unseen into the fabric of time. A great tumult filled the city of Susa, as the news of Haman's disgrace reverberated through the streets. Whispers turned into shouts and cries of jubilation erupted as the people grasped the weight of Esther's brave revelation. The fear of oppression gave way to a glimmer of hope, as families gathered, pondering the possibilities unfolding before them. Esther, still in the banquet hall, trembled before the throne of her husband, her heart heavy yet elated. Ahasuerus, with fire kindled in his eyes, sought to restore order as he commanded, "Let the royal house be free of treachery. Let it stand as a haven for those who seek refuge in truth." But deep within him, confusion lingered. What now shall be done for the Jews, whose fate lay under the shadow of Haman's decree? He wondered aloud, his voice trembling with uncertainty. In that moment, a voice emerged from the heart of the assembly. It was Mordecai, Esther's elder cousin, who had guided her steps from her youth. With authority gained through trials, he raised his hands and entreated the king, "O King Ahasuerus, righteousness must prevail. A decree must be made to grant your queen's people deliverance from the peril that looms over them." The king turned his gaze to Mordecai, the man of wisdom adorned in sackcloth, for he had sensed God stirring in these tumultuous events. "What is to be done?" Ahasuerus inquired intently. Mordecai, nearing the king's majesty, recounted the truth of the plots woven against the Jews. "They are your subjects, O king, and among them is your queen. Grant them not only life but safety from those who seek to extinguish their light. In writing, let it be decreed, that the Jews shall have the right to defend themselves." Ahasuerus nodded slowly, the murmur of royal advisers echoing his thoughts. "As it is written, so shall it be commanded." He took up the quill and inscribed upon the scroll with fervor, "On the 13th day of the coming month, let it be known that the Jews may gather to protect themselves from their enemies. And all who stand against them shall be met with fierce resistance." With the king's command sealed, messengers were dispatched across the realm, carrying the word of hope. As the scrolls made their way throughout Susa and beyond, light began to pierce the heavy fog of dread clouding the hearts of the Jewish people. Hope, once a flickering candle, burst forth like a wildfire, a divine flame ignited by faith and courage. Meanwhile, Esther felt the weight of the moment pressing upon her soul, a deep trembling awareness that her role stretched further than she had imagined. "Is it possible, Lord," she prayed inwardly, "that through this trial, I am being shaped for an even greater purpose?" As night fell, the stars began to shine brightly above a multitude of diamonds against the velvety sky. Esther lifted her eyes, sensing the presence of the Almighty in every twinkle, each one a reminder of his covenant with Israel, a people chosen and cherished. Yet as hope rose, shadows lingered. Haman's fate was not yet fully sealed, for his hatred still churned beneath the surface, a smoldering ember that could ignite destruction anew. How would he respond to this outrageous turn? For even in defeat, there was yet the breath of vengeance that clung to his very soul. The air thickened with suspense as God's sovereign hand prepared to weave yet another chapter into the tale of his people's deliverance. For the ultimate confrontation was being set, where light and darkness would battle fiercely, revealing faith's greater heroism. And in the unfolding of every event, the divine orchestration of God's plan would flourish in unexpected ways. What alliances might be forged, what betrayals may arise. As Esther pondered her next steps, a divine mystery loomed large, reminding her that the heart of the story was still hidden in God's eternal will, awaiting revelation of his purpose and unfolding plans. And it came to pass that on the fateful day decreed by King Ahasuerus, the hearts of the Jewish people thrummed like a mighty river, flowing with both trepidation and anticipation. The sun crested on the horizon, heralding the moment when hope would either flourish or wither, but the resolve that ran through the veins of God's faithful was palpable. Esther, now radiant in her royal gown, stood beside Mordecai, her beloved cousin, whose spirit had ignited within her a strength that transcended fear. "Today, we will witness the power of our God," she proclaimed, her eyes scanning the multitude gathered in prayer. "Let us remember the covenant he made with our fathers, for he never forgets his people." With the sound of a trumpet ringing forth, the Jewish community rallied in solemn unity. Families embraced, children echoed the sentiments of hope that flowed through their elders, and a cacophony of prayers reached the ears of the Almighty. The sacred call to arms was set, "The battle is the Lord's. We will defend ourselves." Meanwhile, in the shadows, Haman, deeply entrenched in his wicked schemes, felt the swell of dread rising within him. Bitter vengefulness coiled in his heart as he pondered the injustice he felt had been thrust upon him. "I will not allow their defiance to go unpunished," he seethed through clenched teeth. Yet, unbeknownst to him, the very plot he had crafted against Mordecai and the Jews was unraveling like threads of deceit in the hands of the Almighty. For God's justice is a swift river that flows in accordance with his divine timing. As the clock ticked toward the hour of conflict, the Jewish people fortified themselves through prayer and anointed their hands with the oil of preparation. Mordecai, wearing sackcloth beneath his armor, stirred a fierce courage among the ranks. "Remember," he shouted, "we are fighting not just for our lives but for the legacy of our God. He has chosen us for this moment." With the decree resounding through the provinces, the enemy began to tremble. Even those who had once aligned with Haman felt a strange disquiet rising within them. A sense of dread, foreign yet palpable, clung to the air as if heaven itself was about to intervene. As the appointed day dawned, striking a mighty chord within the hearts of Israel, the Jewish people prepared to defend their spiritual heritage with unwavering fervor, and so, it came to that pivotal moment when the battle began. The sound of clashing swords and the cries of warriors rose in a symphony of defiance, echoing through the corridors of history. The Jewish people stood their ground, emboldened by the prayers of Esther and Mordecai, feeling the providence of God upon them. "For our lives, we shall not retreat," they proclaimed, faith coursing through them like wildfire. Divine intervention was swift, for the hand of the Almighty guided their paths. Many hostile forces fell before them, and the enemies of Israel were gripped with confusion and fear. The shadows of doubt turned into the light of triumph, as God's faithfulness unfolded their victory before their very eyes. In the courts of Xerxes, the king marveled at the turn of events. It appears the Jews are defended by something far greater than mere swords. He mused, perplexed by the momentum shifting against Haman's deceit. In a space that once dripped with malice, a new decree was born, a proclamation of life that glimmered like starlight cutting through the dark night. The encounter culminated in a fateful confrontation. As Haman, ever reckless, sought to rally his remaining forces, he fell victim to his own schemes. The gallows he built for Mordecai became a symbol of his end, a divine irony woven through history. "May my fate be like that of the foe I sought to destroy," he cried in despair, as the weight of his malice bore down like the forces of nature unleashed. Queen Esther, standing her ground amid the chaos, watched the tide turn. "Let this day be marked, not just as a day of battle, but as a day of deliverance," she declared with unwavering faith. "For the Lord has indeed fought for his people." As the dust settled and the echoes of conflict faded, the people of Israel stood victorious. They rejoiced, their laughter like a healing balm upon the wounds of their fears. Joy swelled in their hearts as they honored the name of Yahweh for his faithfulness, recalling the promises spoken through their forefathers. In the aftermath, Mordecai rose as a beacon of hope, becoming second only to King Xerxes in the land. Esther's courage had transformed not only her own destiny but that of her people forever, their legacy inscribed in the heart of history. The festival of Purim was established, a testament to God's providence, a celebration of survival and triumph born from the very trials they faced, and thus, the tale weaves through the generations a story of bravery, of faith unfaltering, and of God's unbreakable commitment to his people. For where there are hearts attuned to the call of divine purpose, there shall also rise an enduring song of victory. Now, dear friends, let this divine tale echo within your souls, igniting a flame of courage to face your own battles. Let us stand united in faith, promising not to let the light of God's word dim, but to boldly share it with the world. So I urge you, subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next powerful biblical stories that can transform your life. Leave a like now to help spread God's word through the algorithm. Comment your spiritual reflections and how this biblical story has impacted your faith. And do not wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth. Let us come together to spread the light of His love and mercy. The time is now.